what was it that you had to unlearn from your childhood or being a teenager that now I'm going through this healing journey? And I like to say, this is that. Because you kind of mentioned how we're doing things and we don't realize how those things are impacting what we're doing and how we're behaving now. And you got to unlearn some things, but what's normal to us. What did you realize that family, community, society, school had made you into that you realize I've got to unlearn this if I really want to be Lindsey?
Yes, for me specifically, it was that sense of not being good enough. And I could see how it played out from when I was a child and the different things that I did. Specifically, it displayed in my behaviors by being a perfectionist, being an overachiever, being a people pleaser. Like I was the one, I wanted everybody to like me. And if you didn't like me, I took it personal, like, what am I doing wrong that you don't like me? Because everybody should like me, right?
Welcome to another episode of Becoming with Angelina Watkins, where we are turning dreamers into believers and doers, sharing the lives of those who have overcome adversity, found a level of success, and are living a fulfilled life on their terms. We are having open and candid conversations where we are giving you a fresh perspective and the blueprint to win at love, life, and money. I'm your host, Angelina Watkins, and I have with me here Lindsey Vertner. Welcome, Lindsey. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, hey, thank you for having me.
I'm so, now you already know, I done already told you. I'm excited to have you. Y'all, before we get started with Lindsey, I have to tell you all how we met because I have to let you all know that when you decide that you want to do something and you got a purpose for something or you got an idea or a concept and you decide that you're going to leap and do that thing, I'm telling you, God will start to bring people into your life to make it happen. And so I met Lindsey back in September. We had went to a boot camp, a marketing boot camp. And I go in, me and my husband were going, we're trying to find these seats, and there's this pretty young lady, and I'm like, can I sit here? She's like, sure, come sit here. And I swear it felt like I met my best friend. So she's sitting there and she has all of these books out that say First Class Life. And of course, I'm curious. I want to know, what is this material? And look, note number one for you all, that is great marketing. Okay, if you got products but it's not your event, you better take your products, put them on the table next to you, because somebody is going to ask you about your stuff. So I asked her about what is all of this. And so she starts to, and I'm not going to tell you now, I'm going to let her tell you about her products, but she had this book and a workbook. She had some stuff, y'all. And then she begins to tell me her story. And as she's telling me her story, I'm like, oh my God, she needs to be on my show. Like, she is the epitome of what my podcast is all about. So I'm saying that to say, I had this idea, I had this concept of a podcast. I had decided to get me a mentor to help me start my podcast. But when I did that, God began to bring people into my life that fit my concept. And Lindsey was one of them. Yes. And it was only like a week later. I had got this mentor, came up with this concept, and boom, I go out of town, I meet Lindsey, and then here we are. So Lindsey, thank you so much for joining us or joining me
Absolutely.
today.
My
So
pleasure.
this is going to be great. I think you all are going to love her story because I loved her story. It was very intriguing to me. And so we're just going to dive right into it because that's why she's here, because I really want her to share with you all. Gosh, she had something tragic happen to her. And what happened to her is nothing short of a miracle that she's sitting here today. But it is what she did after the healing that has got me so excited. So, Lindsay, start us off with, the tragic. Just tell us your story.
Oh, yes, we are jumping right in there.
We jumping right in there. We're gonna
I
get
love
right in there.
it. So, if I'm going to share this story, I'm going to share this story since
Okay.
we have this time. Is that okay?
It's okay. We're here. We're listening.
Absolutely. All right. So, here's what happened. In May of 2007, I found myself waking up in complete darkness. I had no clue where I was. I couldn't see anything around me except I noticed that the moonlight was shining through an unfamiliar window. And I went to move and I couldn't move. I went to call out and I couldn't speak. And so in my head, the only logical explanation is that I'm locked up in some psycho's basement who is waiting for me to wake up so he can torture me, right? And so I started to panic, like, because what else do you do in a moment like that except panic? I have no clue where I'm at, can't see, can't speak, can't move. And I panicked so much that I exhausted myself out to the point where I passed out.
Oh my. Okay.
And the next time I woke up, I thought to myself, what a crazy nightmare. It felt so real. Only to slowly realize that, wait a minute, I still don't know where I am. I still can't see anything around me. I still can't move and I still can't speak. The only thing that had changed was now the sunlight was shining through that same window that I knew wasn't mine. But before I could panic again, a lady walks up to me and she starts asking me questions and she's talking to me. And I'm thinking that this lady is a little crazy. I'm trying to answer her questions. But in reality, the only noises that were coming out of my mouth were,
So, could you see the lady? You couldn't
yes,
see the lady. You
she
could
was
see the
close
lady.
enough
Okay.
that I could see her.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. So the reason I'll give you this little piece. The reason I couldn't see is because I wear glasses and contacts. Well, not anymore. I got LASIK, but
Okay.
I've worn glasses and contacts all of my life. And once I tell you what happened, those weren't there. So literally everything around me was blurry except what was right immediately in front of me. And she had walked up right next to me and she starts asking me these questions. And I'm thinking that I'm answering her, but in reality, there were just noises coming out of my mouth because there was a tube going down my throat, keeping
Mm.
me alive. Turns out this little blonde lady is my nurse, and she proceeds to tell me that an entire week earlier, on May 13th, 2007, the car I was driving flipped multiple times as if it were doing backflips before going off the opposite side of the highway and landing upside down.
Okay, y'all. Listen. Mm, I gotta pause. I gotta pause because I heard this. I know she was in the hospital. I know she was in that. I didn't hear all this. You were out for a week?
Mm-hmm.
A week. Okay. Wow. So did they tell you what happened with the accident, that your car flipped? Like, what happened?
So it was a
Did
single car
someone hit
accident.
you?
So
Okay.
we don't know what happened because I actually have no memory of an entire week of my life. And I lost memory before the accident. So just before it, maybe about an hour-ish before it, um, until the time I woke up.
Okay. So now you're in this hospital.
Hmm.
You can see her, but you can't move.
I can barely see her. Yes.
You can't talk. How are you here today?
So by God's grace, let me just
Yes.
put that out there first and foremost.
Amen. Amen.
This perfectly explains why that's the most important because I was pinned in the car. Like my head was pinned between the ground and the entire weight of the car on top of me. They had to
Mm,
cut me from the car and immediately I was pronounced brain dead on the scene. And if you
really?
Google what happens when someone is brain dead, everything says there is no coming back from that. All the articles that you will find say there is no coming back for that. And if the body is still working, it's only a matter of time before that shuts off because there's no coming back. So I was pronounced brain dead on the scene. But despite that, they proceeded to put me in a helicopter where I was lifeline to a trauma hospital. And again, upon arrival, I was pronounced brain dead all over again by a new set of medical professionals, but God, because
But God.
despite another moment to put a sheet over my body, they proceeded to do emergency surgeries anyway. And the only reason they placed me on life support was until they could contact my family. But they didn't expect me to make it through the night, even on life support.
So what's the surgery that they did?
I needed a blood transfusion. I had lost a lot of blood. And then the main surgery was my head was literally split open. If you part my hair just right, you can still see the scars that I have from ear to ear. But they had to relieve pressure from my brain and they had to reposition my skull back together.
So do they think that because they did that, that was part of the saving grace? I mean, we know it was God, but
Right.
but God, listen, y'all, God tells people to do things, right? They
Mm-hmm.
could have just put the sheet over you, put you on the life support, said we're not doing anything, but God talks to people. He has them do some work. So was that maybe part of that saving grace? Like what made them decide that I'm going to go ahead and do this surgery, even though we think that this is not going to do anything?
Yes, whatever that decision was, I don't know. But it's funny because actually, just this year, when I was leading a 100-day devotional, it dawned on me that that was probably some awkward conversations because there were not one, but at minimum two moments where there had to been an outlier. Because if you think about a lot of people in the science world, oftentimes you don't find believers. However, there are people that believe in science and God. They are out there.
Mhm.
But I can only imagine what those conversations were because I'm sure there was one that was like, let's go ahead and put her on this helicopter and try to get her to a trauma hospital when everybody else was probably like, but she's dead, but they went with their gut and they did it anyway. And then when I arrived at the hospital, I'm sure again that conversation was likely had. I could picture it in my brain that there was somebody that was like, all right, let's call it. But there had to have been someone that was like, no, no, no. Let's go ahead and do the surgeries. I know what it looks like, and I know what
Mhm.
my research and my degrees and what science says it is, but let's do these surgeries anyway, at least until we can contact her family.
Thank God for the doctors who believe in God.
Right?
So now you're in this hospital bed. At what point I mean, what's happening that you end up, I mean, you're here, you're seeing, you're talking, you're walking. How do we get to this point?
Yes. Well, listen, there's more to that before I even get
Okay.
to this point, because as she is telling me what had happened, the first thing I'm thinking is, thank God I'm alive. That was first and foremost. And then, I'm me. So the next thing I thought was like, oh, thank God I wasn't in some psycho space. I still didn't know where I was, but at least I was safe, right?
Right.
So she's proceeding to tell me all of the things that had occurred. And she's listing off just injury after injury. Like one of the vertebrae in my spine was crushed. But then there was the whopper of the injury. So I had woken up to being told that not only had I been brain dead for the past week, but on top of a long list of injuries, I was also paralyzed.
Oh.
So I went from minding my business, driving home from visiting my mother on Mother's Day, to waking
Oh.
up and being told that I was brain dead and paralyzed.
So how long did it take them to figure out who you were and find your family and contact them to let them know that you was in this hospital?
So I had left, let's see, so this was a Sunday, it was May 13th, 2007, was a Sunday. and I had left just after church. So it was probably about 2 or 3 o'clock. After church, I went back to my mom's house to say bye to her, get all my stuff. Then I grabbed some lunch and then I hit the road. And at that time, there was not an easy way to get to where I live. There's a new highway that I can get there in seconds now. But at that time, it took about 3 hours to get from my mother's house to where I lived. And so between the hours of 2 and 3 to about 3 hours later, because I was about an hour away from home where the wreck happened, um, that's that's whenever it happened, early afternoon. And then my family wasn't contacted until after midnight. So it was like early Monday morning. They didn't know who. So I was in college at the time. So my ID said Evansville, Indiana, but I had actually swapped cars with my boyfriend for driving purposes. And so the registration had Georgia registration on it. And then my student ID had Bloomington, Indiana. So it took them quite some time to figure out, like, who is she? Where do we like find her people? All of
Right.
those things.
Okay. So you were right down the road from me. And in Indiana. Okay, so now what?
So I'm laying there and I'm just trying to process what I had just been told. And the only thing that I could think about as I am just trying to work through what is happening was that whatever I do right now is not going to change what has already happened. I could
Is this
cry
what you're
my
telling yourself?
Yes, yes. This is what I'm thinking in my head. I could cry my eyes out. I could throw myself the world's biggest pity party. I could lay in this bed and just wallow and wallow and wallow. But none of that is going to change what has already happened. And how do I move forward with what has already happened, with what I can control to create the life that I truly desire?
Pause. Where did that come from? Have you always been that way? Because I don't know if I could be laying up in a hospital bed and someone tells me that you're paralyzed, this, that, and the third, and that's my thought process. Now, if I've already trained to think that way, but I don't know. Knowing, even though I'm a positive thinker and I'm always thinking about, what can I control? I think for a moment, I just would have been a little panicky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is
How do
definitely
we think
understood.
how do we think like that in this moment that they're telling me I'm paralyzed and your life will never be the same, for you to say, okay, I could cry, or I could just control what I can control. Like, where does that come from?
That had to be nobody but God. Because as much as I love psychology and how the brain works and why people do the things that they do, that is my only explanation. And I actually really like that question because I don't think I've ever gotten that question before, as much as I've told my story. But I can honestly sit here and say that I feel like that was nobody but God working through me in that moment, because it definitely walked me right into my purpose that I didn't even know was going to be my purpose. So I thought I was living a good life, but during that time frame, I realized that I was not living the best life and I was not working at my maximum potential. Like, I knew things were good. I knew kind of the direction that I wanted to go in, but it was not going to be where I was going to make the maximum amount of impact in this world.
So what did you think was your purpose?
To be an eye doctor. I
So is that
knew
what
I
I
wanted
know
to
you said
help
you were in
people.
college.
Hmm.
So was that what you were in school for? Was to be an eye doctor?
Yes, so I was pre-optometry. So I was half my classes were pre-med and the other half were psychology because, like I said, I've always liked psychology. So my undergrad degree was in psychology, a bachelor's in psychology, but I was studying to be pre-med. And then after college, I was planning to go to graduate school to actually become an eye doctor. But then this happened midway through college, and I was still pre-med, but um, after I graduated, I was like, I don't think this is it. Like, I don't think this is the direction that I'm supposed to go in.
What made you think that? What were you feeling? What were you thinking?
I just didn't feel fulfilled. And it was like, all right, I feel like this is a safe thing to do, but I don't feel like that's where God is calling me to go, especially not after having dealt with the emotional recovery of what I went through from a resulting of the wreck.
So tell us, what was that emotional recovery? Because now you got the physical recovery. What is
Mm-hmm.
the emotional recovery? Because you just said, "Hey, let's do this. I got this. I can control this." So, what was your emotional journey in your physical healing?
Yes, so listen, it started in the beginning because there were about three articles that were written about me. And the main one, the very first one, it was front page news. The headline said, Miracle on the Highway. Like those were the big words across the top, Miracle on the Highway. And then the subtitle said, Woman believed dead is now alive in Indianapolis hospital. And so that was one. And then, as you can see, I'm here, I'm talking to you, I'm not a ghost. And people around the world had started calling me Miracle Woman and Walking Miracle. People that I knew and that I didn't know, because, obviously my mom called together everybody that she could, and social media was already a thing. So it was kind of spreading on there. It was still early social media, but there were people that I knew and didn't know that, were hearing about what had happened, even if they didn't live in the local area. And so I didn't feel good enough to be given that title. Although I was very honored, I didn't feel good enough to be called Miracle Woman, because although doctors had told my family and friends that, if she wakes up, she's likely not going to be the same person, I was. When I woke up, I was still Lindsey. The only thing that had changed was, now I have this week of my life that's missing, and I'm trying to put the pieces together. But essentially, as a whole, I was still Lindsey. My faith didn't change any. So I still believed in God the same way that I did prior to the wreck. And so here I am now with this title and this experience where sometimes people would talk to me or be in my presence, and it was, for me, it felt like they were waiting for like that touch the hem of his robe type of experience. And not to call myself God by any means, but you know what I mean?
I do. I get it. I get it. That's funny.
And so it was a lot of pressure on me. And so what happened was I had started trying to live up to that expectation, trying to do all the things, be all the things, do all the things for all the people all the time, in efforts to live up to this title that was placed up on me that I didn't necessarily ask for. And so what I recognized was that the feelings that came with that, and the lack of self-care that came with that, and the resulting decreased sense of self-worth, many women around the world are experiencing the exact same thing, but for their own different reasons, for their own life experiences. And what I notice is that it affects the quality of life you are creating, which ultimately affects your happiness, how fulfilled you are, and how boldly you walk or don't walk in your purpose.
So tell us now, because I just started talking about who you were, and we didn't really talk about what you do. So tell them, what do you do? I mean, that's usually, and we're gonna have you introduce yourself now. Okay. Tell them, what do you do?
So I'm a mindset expert and speaker, and what I do is I help high achieving women who struggle with those mental blocks like perfectionism, overthinking, imposter syndrome, those things that hold us back from really achieving our limitless goals. I help women to increase their clarity, confidence, connections, and cash flow.
Love, life, and money, y'all. She's got the blueprint.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And I could talk about this stuff all day long about, getting the self-confidence and the clarity. But where did you get your clarity? Because now you're talking about you're trying to live up to other people's expectations and this name they put on you, and you're not happy. You're doing things to make other people happy, and you're realizing you're not happy. You're not taking care of yourself. So what turned this around for you? How did you get your clarity that this is what I'm supposed to do?
So it actually just started falling into place as I recovered my own self. And I actually went to get my master's in professional counseling. So before I hopped over to coaching and speaking, I went from being an eye doctor to, okay, well, maybe I'm supposed to be a counselor and help people in that way. And then as I was going through my master's program, that's when everything started to click and be like, nope, 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 that's not exactly, you're closer, but not quite exactly where you're supposed to be. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting at my desk and it just seemed like I was getting bad news after bad news after bad news. Early that morning, I was in grad school. I was working an internship, which meant I was slaving away for free. I was married by then. I had children and they had their own little toddler activities and things like that. And again, I was in that space where I was trying to do all the things for all the people all the time. I was averaging about 2 to 3 hours of sleep per night. And after that last phone call that I had hung up from, I just started bawling. And it wasn't even about the phone call. Like, I didn't know where the tears were coming from, but I started bawling and bawling, like the ugly face, snot dripping down, and like indescribable noises come, like that kind of bawling, okay?
That's that good cry.
Right? And I was like, what is happening? What's going on? And it was in that moment that I was like, whatever this is can't continue. And so I called my children's preschool and I was like, I was going to pick them up after school, but please send them to aftercare. I closed both my computers at the time. And I was like, anything that has to be done today is not getting done. I closed it. I gave myself 5 minutes to feel those emotions. And then I said, all right, I'm going to go to sleep. And I slept the rest of the day because, mind you, all of this had happened by 11 a.m. So I was like, I don't know what else the day is going to bring. So I cried for 5 minutes. I did what I needed to do. And then I went to sleep until it was time to pick up my children. I didn't cook like I had planned on cooking. I didn't go to the grocery store. We ordered pizza and I chilled out the rest of the day. So the next day when I woke up, I'm thinking, all right, if I can feel that much better from just that amount of sleep, then what happens if I am proactively taking care of myself first? And that's whenever it really clicked about how our beliefs and the things that we allow ourselves to do or don't do when it comes to prioritizing our own selves affects what we're doing, because we don't realize that when we lack self-care, we have a decrease in focus. We increase our risk for overwhelm and depression and anxiety. We weaken our immune system. And there's all of these other symptoms that we don't connect to our lack of self-care, to putting ourselves first. And so that's whenever it really started to click, like, wait a minute, this is a game changer. And so I was more intentional about getting more hours of sleep, doing things that fill me up instead of drain me out. I started saying no a lot more. And definitely try to be a woman of my word. So rather than say yes and then regret it later and drudge through it, I just said no from the very beginning. So just little things like that. And then that's when I really started to understand about our inner limiting beliefs, the things that we believe about ourselves, our sense of self-worth, self-care, and self-discipline, and how they're all tied together into the quality of life we're living.
So I hear the word self-care a lot. I see it on social media all the time. I even went to a women's ministry thing at my church, which was all about self-care. And I think people have different definitions of what is self-care, but tell me, what does it mean for a woman to practice self-care?
When we hear that word, we oftentimes think of the very surface level, superficial things, i.e., going to get a massage, going shopping, getting your nails done, your hair done. And listen, those are definitely forms of self care, but it's levels to this, right?
Okay, tell
So
us
if
the
you love
levels.
to
Tell
do
us
those
the
things,
levels.
then that is great. But self care goes so much deeper than that, because in reality, true self care doesn't always look pretty. And so self care is saying no. Self care is setting boundaries and maintaining boundaries with every single person that you have a relationship. Platonically, romantically, professionally, everybody needs some level of boundaries. Self care is healing our past traumas and experiences that we've been through in our lifetime. And that's the really ugly part, because that can take you to your knees and have you doing that ugly cry like I
Ooh,
did,
child, I know.
right?
Ooh, child, I know, I know, I know.
So those are all forms of self-care, but oftentimes we don't recognize those things as being self-care, but they are very necessary to being able to increase our level of self-awareness and understand how our inner limiting beliefs affect the behaviors that we have, which affects the life that we live, the environment that we create for ourselves, the reality that we end up living out, whether it's fulfilled or not fulfilled. And so it's very important that we understand all of those pieces and how they work together.
Yeah. So after I had went to that women's ministry, I was talking to my husband and I was telling him about what I thought to be self-care. And I'm like, that's your doing that mental and emotional work. I said, it's
Mhm.
nice to go get a massage because you mentioned massage and I like to get massages. But I said, but when you go get the massage and you're laying on that table, the outer it feels good, but what are you doing with that time, spending your time emotionally and mentally to get yourself together, to collect your thoughts? So can you talk about that a little bit of what it looks like for a person to really work on their emotional and mental in order to really be in tune with themselves and have that self-awareness?
Yes, yes. This is definitely
What does that work look like?
it's messy. It is messy and ugly, and you're
Have
gonna
lots
go
of
through some
tissue.
things. Yes, yes. Because in those moments, you have to be willing to be completely vulnerable and honest with yourselves. And many of us don't want to do that. We want to keep living this fantasy or this fairy tale. We want to keep wearing the mask that we put on, even as exhausting and draining as wearing those masks are. We are fearful of the unknown, and we are fearful of change, we are fearful of rejection, and we will do anything that we can to stay away from pain. And when we don't know what's going to happen, like, that's very painful for us, and healing those things is very painful on an emotional sense. And so we have to first be honest and vulnerable, and then we have to really ask ourselves the tough questions. That one of them is, what do I want? And I know that seems like such a simple question, but you would be surprised how many
I'm not
people
surprised.
can't answer it.
I'm not surprised.
Majority
Yes.
of people cannot answer that seemingly simple question of what do I want? Not
Why
what do
though?
your kids want?
Why though? Why can't we answer the question of what do you want? Even
Mhm.
when it comes down to simply where do you want to eat? Okay. And I know men are probably like, yeah, my woman does it all the time. And but even when, okay, well, what do you want to eat? I don't know. As why don't we know what we want out of life? Why don't we know where we want to go, what we want to do? Where
Because
is the
we get
confusion
lost
coming from?
in the sense of identity that everybody else has placed upon us. So when you're a child, your caregivers, maybe that was your parents or grandparents, or if you're adopted or whomever took care of you, they placed all of their beliefs up onto you. And then as you start to grow, you probably likely see examples and experiences that reflect in their beliefs, especially if you live a very sheltered life where you didn't get to travel and experience different cultures and belief systems and things like that. And so now you are taking on these sets of beliefs that were never yours in the first place. And then we continue to have our life experiences, and society also places a set of beliefs upon us. And so we take on that a little bit. And then we start to have this thinking pattern that influences our behaviors that attract more of that said belief, because I think this, so I act this way, which only causes me to create an environment that attracts more of that same thing. Excuse me, only reinforcing that same belief. So you have to do a lot of unlearning when you're going through the self-care process. And that is the hard part. And what happens, then we become adults and we're like, I don't really know what it is that I truly want, because I've spent my life living up to the expectations and the identities of other people and those that were placed upon me and that I thought were mine. And I kind of still feel are mine, because it's scary to realize that they weren't mine and completely potentially change my whole life. And so we're lost. And that's how it happens.
So you talked about how you had to, get yourself together after do the emotional care as you were physically healing. But as you began to go on your healing journey and you realize, you marry your children and you realize I have to start doing some things for myself. Was there something, what was it that you had to unlearn from your childhood or being a teenager that now I'm going through this healing journey? And I like to say, this is that. Because you
Mhm.
kind of mentioned how we're doing things and we don't realize how those things are impacting what we're doing and how we're behaving now. And you got to unlearn some things, but what's normal to us. What did you realize that family, community, society, school had made you into that you realize I've got to unlearn this if I really want to be Lindsey?
Yes, for me specifically, it was that sense of not being good enough. And I could see how it played out from when I was a child and the different things that I did. Specifically, it displayed in my behaviors by being a perfectionist, being an overachiever, being a people pleaser. Like I was the one, I wanted everybody to like me. And if you didn't like me, I took it personal, like, what am I doing wrong that you don't like me? Because everybody should like me, right? And I realized where it stemmed from. And that's where these subconscious beliefs. So I keep mentioning about limiting beliefs, and you might be like, what is that? And so limiting beliefs are our beliefs that we hold to be true about ourselves. But the thing about them that makes them tricky is that they sit just below our conscious awareness. So we don't recognize how those beliefs are influencing our behaviors and creating the reality that we live in, because we like to think we're in control, but we only control about 5% of our actual actions. Everything else is involuntary and a result of those inner limiting beliefs that we have and hold to be true about ourselves. And so in my case, like I said, it was people pleasing, it was being a perfectionist, and it stemmed from having an absent father. And I knew who my father was. He popped up here and there. And I'm grateful that today we have a great relationship and he's been a great grandfather from day one. But it took a long time to get there. And when I am a child, despite having an absolutely phenomenal, loving, caring, and supportive mother, there was still a void that was missing because it was, why doesn't my father want me? And that resulted in me being a people pleaser, because if all of these people like me, then I must be good enough for him as well. Oh, okay, so that doesn't work. Well, then let me excel and do all the things. Okay, get good grades. Let me do this activity and excel there, because if I do that, then I must be good enough. Okay, so that doesn't work. All right. And so, well, let me just keep going. And it just becomes a toxic cycle. And next thing you know, everybody else's needs comes before yours. And I really had to learn that I am good enough, just as I am.
So you went from being your people pleaser caused you to be a high achiever, which caused you to be an overachiever, which caused you to be a perfectionist.
All of those things.
All of those things. Y'all,
Hmm.
that just shows you how one thing leads to another thing, and then they all work together for you to, and you had to unbecome that. So how did you work on saying, okay, because I'm a high achiever. I think I'm a high achiever. And I have been an overachiever. That person who is always on the next goal. What's the
Hmm.
next thing I can accomplish? Okay, I accomplished this. Now let me go to the next level and accomplish. And it's all about accomplishments. It's all about degrees and certificates and, professional certifications and, all of those types of things that it's like, when do you stop? And
Hmm.
at some point I had to stop and do something. Like, I love to learn though, but how do you be a high achiever and keep from being an overachiever? Does that question make
That
sense?
I think I got you. I think I got you.
Because I
That's
think you
gonna.
could be a high achiever without being an overachiever, right?
Hmm.
Because you
Yes.
want to be able to set high goals and reach those goals to, as we say, create the life you want without limits.
Hmm.
But some of us just don't know how to stop so that we can enjoy where we are. And some of us um, aren't doing it for the right reasons. How do you figure out when I'm not doing it for the right reasons? I'm doing it for validation. I'm doing it for people pleasing. I'm doing it to just get a pats on the back and not really
Hmm.
doing it to create the life I want with no limits. How do you identify it? And how do you still be a high achiever and not be an overachiever? I know I
How
don't
do you
give you two questions
identify
in
it,
one.
and how do you still be a high achiever without? So I'm going to answer the original first question, second question first.
Okay.
So, how do you be a high achiever without being an overachiever? Definitely comes into play that sense of self-worth. And that's what's going to make the difference between small line, that thin fine line between high achieving versus overachieving. Because whenever you increase your sense of self-worth and know that you are worthy and deserving of all it is that you truly desire, then it's going to push you to go after those big scary goals that usually we're fearful of, and achieve those things. So that's in the high achieving realm, because I am trying to create the best life for myself. But see, here's the thing, because it doesn't happen overnight. It's the small actions that add up and accumulate every single day. And then next thing you know, you find yourself unfulfilled. You find yourself resentful. You find yourself going through the motions. You have all the things on paper. It seems like you're doing all the right things, making the right moves, but for some reason, when you go home and you are getting ready for bed and you're going to sleep with just yourself, even if somebody is laying next to you, you aren't happy, and you don't necessarily know why you aren't happy. And you start to, that's where imposter syndrome can come in, because it's like, I'm doing all these things and I'm playing all these roles, but when I go home, I feel like I don't know what the hell is going on, or I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, what is this life? Like, I'm not excited to wake up tomorrow. I'm very exhausted. I'm very drained day in and day out. And
I
I
think you're
can't put my
describing my life
finger
2 years
on
ago.
why that is. And so that's the difference. Whenever you are experiencing all of those emotions that subtly come on you, you are being an overachiever versus a high achiever.
Got it. Got it. Now,
Hmm.
how, and so now you've answered the first question, which was how do you identify that? It's a slow process, y'all.
Yes, yes.
But when you realize it, you gotta make some changes in your life. Okay, so you got clarity on who you are. You got clarity on what you're supposed to be doing, but you're in school, professional counseling, but we're a mindset coach. How
Hmm.
do we go from I'm going to school to be a counselor or a therapist, but I'm going to turn this into a coaching program?
Yes. So while I was in my master's program, one of the requirements were, as we are working to be therapists, we also had to have our own therapy. So I had to do a lot of inner work and growth within myself, and knowing the things that I knew from my studies and from my own life experiences and the things that were being revealed to me, I started to ask myself, what makes someone quote unquote successful, right? What separates those that are truly, genuinely happy and fulfilled in their lives from those that are not? And unfortunately, the majority of the world is not. And so, as I dove as I like dug deeper into it and began to, just look and research and compare my own experiences, I noticed that there were a set of common characteristics and skills that separated those that were being great and loving it versus those that were just living.
So what
And,
were they?
and so that is essentially where my whole coaching program became about, because I'm gonna come back to that in just a moment. But prior to getting there, I recognized how my friends and family interacted with me, and how the things that I would do or say or work through with them would make a difference in their life. So there was that piece. I was coaching for free before I even realized I was coaching.
Where
And
don't we
then,
all?
yeah,
our,
as
our
I
our
went
purpose be
through.
right in front of our eyes and we don't even know it. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly what happened. And then as I went through my studies and started to pay attention and be more intentional about just different areas and aspects that I focused on, that's whenever the coaching piece came about. And it was like, light bulb, ding, ding, ding. Oh, you're a funny guy. Now I get it. So I went through these things so that I could be better prepared to coach others and help them in these things, in these areas, in these ways, so that they can in turn create the life of their dreams, a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness, where they are fully walking in their God-given purpose, where they are creating their living legacy, where they are shedding away those masks that we put on, and instead they are boldly and unapologetically walking in who they are, flaws and all. And that's what I call a first class life. So
Okay.
that's how it
And
came
y'all,
about.
that those are the books that I saw on the table that I'm like, what is
Yes.
this? Purple, they stand out, they caught my attention, and I wanted to know what is the first class life. And so that's why we're here today, because I wanted to know what is this first class life. And so basically the first class life is living your life on your terms,
Mm-hmm.
right? Happy and fulfilled, walking in purpose. But in your coaching program, you teach them, you said you've done, you saw that successful people do a certain set of things versus those who, I don't want to say they're not successful, but they they might have achieved a level of success, but they're not where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a difference between those who are where they want to be versus those who are not where they want to be. What are those who are fulfilled and living life on their terms and happy? What are they doing that the rest of the people are not doing?
So I actually talk about it in my book. Like that's the quickest way to find out all of them because there's 14 factors.
Oh,
There's
okay.
10 key main factors, and then I throw in a bonus 4 because I still be overachieving just a little bit.
Give us the top three. We got because they
Yes.
gotta buy that book. So they need to
Uh-huh.
buy the book.
Uh-huh.
But give us the top three things that successful people are doing that are key to success that the rest of the people are not doing.
So when you hear me talk about first class life, it is not a gimmick. It is not like some cutesy phrase. It is a way of life. It is a lifestyle that you embody. And first class life is actually an acronym that stands for each of those characteristics or skills. And the more of them that we embody, the higher quality of life we are living. And so the number one of
Hold
the
on, wait a
three
minute.
things.
Hold on, I'm sorry. So first class so first class life is an acronym. So FIR, like each letter stands
Yes.
for those 14. Okay, I got you. Okay, okay. Give us the fur. Give us the
So
fur.
I am going to give you the F, the I, and the A. So the F and the I from first, and then the A from class.
Okay.
So faithful, first and foremost. So I mean, literally, that was a divine download whenever that came about because first and foremost, you have to be faithful. So, obviously, I'm sure you guys have figured it out that I believe in God, but no matter what your belief systems are, you have to believe in something bigger than yourself. I'm not going to push my spirituality on you, but for me, that was God. And so, whenever you are faithful, that things will work out for your good, despite what it looks like right now, despite what other people may be telling you, despite your given circumstances or your past experiences, then not only does it help to decrease your sense of overwhelm and your sense of stress, but it helps you to manage your emotions. It helps you to be more level-headed when you're making your decisions because you know that it's all going to work out for your good. And I'm the living example. Like all of it, I have literally lived through every single key of first class life. So I haven't just studied it, but I've personally lived it. So I know that these things work. So being faithful and knowing that it's all going to work out for your good. And so when I was laying in that hospital bed and I'm listening to the things, I believed, despite what was being told to me, that God had a bigger purpose for my life. Period, point blank. And I
Got it.
set that planted in my mind. And that's what I focused on.
Okay.
So there's a sub B of a sub part of being faithful as well, because if you look faithful up in the dictionary, there's also being consistent and reliable. So not only do you need to be faithful in your spirituality, but you also need to be faithful in who you are as a person, because you can't be one person on Monday, different person on Wednesday, completely different person on Saturday and Sunday. Like people don't know how to take you, and that affects your relationships, which affects the environment that you're in. And so you have to also be faithful in who you are as a person. And when we're trying to live up to the expectations of other people, it's hard to do that. The only way we can be faithful to who we are as a person is whenever we are living up to who God calls us to be, and when we are being authentically ourselves. So that's
Okay. Okay, that's the app. And so I heard you say faithful is also realizing that there's something bigger than you,
yes.
which is your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Realizing your purpose. Okay, so then what is I?
Intentional. You have
Ah,
to
why did I
be
guess that?
intentional.
Okay. Yes. I'm gonna guess what A is, but we can see if I'm right or wrong. Okay. Intentional. Tell us about
Intention
intentional.
matters because we don't understand that our thoughts influences our actions, and I've said it many times already over the past hour, which influences the environment and reality that we create ourselves. Not only is it biblical, so for all my spiritual folks, it's in your Bible, be careful and mindful of the words that you speak and what's on your heart, because that is going to influence the life that you're living and the things that you do. But it's also in psychology, it's in science and all of those things as well. Like one of my favorite books is As a Man Thinketh. There you go. And that's a quick read for those that don't like to read. It's a very small, quick book, but it's very important. And it was written ages ago, and it still holds true today, because as you think, you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure Buddha has a quote about, thinking and actions as well. But our thoughts influences our actions, which influences our behaviors and environment and reality that we create for ourselves. So you have to ask yourself, what am I thinking about all day long? Are you thinking about the things that you don't have? Are you beating up on yourself like, oh man, I did it wrong again? Oh man, like, am I ever going to find the relationship, a loving partner that I want? Like, oh man, I must not be. Like, what are you telling yourself throughout your day? Because the things that you are telling yourself is influencing how you behave. And it's very, very subtle, because then how you behave encourages and influences what you attract into your life. So that's why it's important. I always say, think it, see it, do it, be it. And fuzzy intentions produce fuzzy results. So we have to be crystal clear
I
on
like
what it is
that.
that we want. Yes. Fuzzy intentions produce fuzzy results. That's where we end up settling.
Mm, that's good. They might not think I think that's good. I've never heard that. I
It
like it. It's true because I'm thinking like, when you are in a state of confusion and things aren't clear and you're the you're about clarity, but it's fuzzy. And if your intentions are fuzzy, you don't even know what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you should be doing, and it's not all there, then your outcomes are going to be fuzzy too, and you're just going to stay in that state of confusion. That's why we need clarity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, so can I guess at A?
Yes.
Accountability?
Nope.
Okay, okay, what's A?
That was a really good guess, though. That was a really good guess. The A is action oriented. And I share these things
Okay.
because they're things that you can get started on doing right now. You don't have to wait till tomorrow, till next month, till you get a degree, to get more money. You can do all of those things right now. You can be faithful, you can be intentional, and you can take action, even if it's a small action. And so, spiritually, we say faith without works is dead. But
Mm-hmm.
also, on the other side of things, vision without execution will never succeed. And so we have to have both of them. We have to be faithful. We have to set our intentions and create the vision. But then we have to turn around and put in the work. There's no way around it. Oftentimes, people don't want to put in the work, whether it's emotional work, physical work. Sometimes it requires financial work, but we're lazy. We don't want to do the work.
We're
But you
comfortable.
the work, yes. And unfortunately, a lot of people are comfortable in their chaos. And that's why we get stuck in these cycles, because we say we want one thing, but we aren't willing to do the work to recognize and heal our inner limiting beliefs that will allow us to actually achieve what it is that we're saying. And so that's why you'll find a disconnect between what people say and what they do. Because remember, those subconscious beliefs are driving what they do, no matter what they say.
Gotcha.
So you got to do the work. And
Y'all
I
got
did.
to do the work, y'all. You
Yes, I
can't
was
have the
there
life that you want
with you.
without doing the work.
Hmm. I was in
All
therapy
right.
every single day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and it was excruciatingly painful. And they actually didn't know if it would work. They didn't know if it would help me walk again, but I did it anyway. And because I wasn't playing the victim, I was willing to go through it, even though they didn't know if it would work. Because many people would be like, oh, well, you're saying it's not going to work. Well, woe is me. Like, I'm not about to put myself through that pain, and you don't even know if it's going to work out. Again, it's that fear of the unknown. But I did it because I held on to the faith. I knew my intentions, And when you know your intentions, whenever those obstacles and those hard times come up, it makes it easier to push forward. Not easy, but easier to keep going and push forward when you know your intention. So all of these things, they interact and they flow together. They're interconnected and intertwined.
So I'd like to point something out though, before I move on, because of what you said, and it made me think. You were going through the physical healing and it was hurting,
Mm-hmm.
but you did it. And eventually the pain got better and
Mm-hmm.
better and better. Am I right or wrong?
You are right and right.
And then eventually one day you wake up with no pain or
Less
little
pain.
to no pain.
Yeah.
Little to no pain. We'll say little to no pain. And so we got the people who need to heal emotionally and they don't want to put in the work because they don't like the pain. They
Mm-hmm.
don't like the physical pain that they feel. They don't like the heart pain that they feel. Not realizing that it hurts, but if you keep working it, if you keep going through the therapy, if you keep going through the healing process, the pain will get less and less and less till you have little to no pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the reward on the other side of your physical healing was that you could walk, right?
Yes.
On the other side of your emotional healing, people, you can walk. You can
Mm-hmm.
walk in who you are. You can walk in thought in your authentic self in peace and freedom, which is so much better than being bound in where you are in the chaos. I just had to point that out because when you were talking about you went through it, the physical therapy and it hurt. I want to make sure folks out there know it's gonna hurt, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the reward on the other side of the process of healing that you got to stay focused on, knowing that the pain you feel now is not going to be there forever.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head with that one. Physically, emotionally. So, in the literal and metaphorical sense, you have to keep pushing through. And again, that's where intentions come in because when you are clear on what you want, when you are, understanding what God is calling you to do, it makes it easier to keep pushing through the pain to get to the other side. And at the same time, you're strengthening your muscles, your mental muscles and your physical muscles. So you're building yourself up. Double win.
So, before we get to our closing, I want you to tell everyone where they can find you, how they can get this first class life material, because y'all got to go find out what these other 11 keys to success are. Okay. So, tell us where they can find you, where they can get the first class life material, and then also uh, tell them about your coaching program.
Yes, I would love to. So you can find me on all of the social media platforms at Lindsey Vertner. As long as you spell my name right, you will find me. I will pop up. You'll see my smiling face there. So at Lindsey Vertner on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all of the things. I try to be consistent. See, faithful. And then if you are interested in the books, coloring books, workbooks, lifestyle affirmation cards, we even got the clothes. Like I said, it's a lifestyle. Get your mug, your journal, whatever you need. You can find it at firstclasslifeshop.com. You'll see all the different products available in different sizes. You'll be able to see many of the books because there's a whole First Class Life series. You have the main key book where I detail all of the factors, and then you get an opportunity to hear from others and how they are creating their first class life and overcoming their obstacles in some of the anthology series. So that is at firstclasslifeshop.com. And then you said, tell them about my coaching. Was that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I have First Class Life Academy, and it is a 12-week program, and it is my purpose, my mission, my heart, and joy because it's an intimate group where I work with women to get through those mental blocks and master their mindset and get through those pillars of self, what I call them: self-care, self-worth, and self-discipline. Those are the 3 phases of the program where I help you to increase your clarity, confidence, connections, and cash flow so that you can become the person that you truly desire to be, fully walk in your purpose, live out your living legacy, not create one and then enjoy it as you're dying at 99 years old, but one that you can start creating and living and enjoying right now to help you create your first class life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. So that is the First Class Life Academy. It is my pride and joy, but it's not about me. It's not for me. It is for all of the women out there that I am meant to serve. Because when we are living at our maximum potential, everybody connected to us is positively impacted as well. And that's the amazing
Absolutely.
thing about it.
Yes. So to close us out, I like to have everyone tell us, what would the Lindsay today, what is a lesson that she has learned that she holds on to, that golden nugget that she would reach back and tell Lindsay at 16?
I would tell her that you are good enough. You were always good enough, and you will always be good enough. So don't forget that you are more than good enough. So just be you.
All right. So I'm going to close this out, wrap this up, and let you all know that where you are is not where you have to be. Your past does not define you. You define you. So heal, transform, and pursue you.